Hello, friends. Welcome. It's Thursday afternoon, and I understand that some of you have questions. Lucky for you, Leigh Brown is here to answer whatever you want to ask. And I've got a really silly one to finish up with today. I'm going to humor it, but we'll start with the serious stuff. So the first question that I was asked is, what impact will the Inflation Reduction Act have on homeowners? Is there anything realtors should be taking advantage of? Well, the reality is this, friends. When money is printed, that doesn't reduce inflation. So the name was marketing, all right? However, what you should be talking to your clients about is that as money is added to the economy, that's called QE or quantitative easing. So now you just got some total nerd work. Hey, yay. Whenever money's added, it devalues the money that's out there. So if it's worth less, it takes more to buy things, right? That's just basic macro and microeconomics. Go back to your college 101 econ classes. As a realtor, though, here's the skinny. Whenever inflation rises, interest rates have to rise in order to stop the rate of inflation, because inflation can't rise forever or we'll all just starve and go broke, God forbid. So you need to call your buyers and say, look, right now, interest rates on the 30-year fixed are hovering around the 5.5 mark. Yes, that's higher than 6 months ago. However, if you look at the historic average, so let's go back over 40 years of 30-year fixed, the average hangs out between 6 and 6.5%. We are still below the historic average. That's a good thing. When things go higher, which they probably will, no crystal ball, but all signs point to higher interest rates, your folks will be glad they locked in now. Also remember this, as you're having these conversations with buyers, don't be a pressure salesperson. Don't be pushy, hardcore. Be the person who thoughtfully walks them through the process, because many people have fear. That's a giant, big emotion. And your job as a realtor is to help them think through it so they can overcome the emotional fear with some logic that helps them make good decisions. Remember too, that as inflation rises and interest rates go up, you know what's going to go higher than both of them? Rents. And so somebody that's in a home that they own on a 30-year fixed, they've got a payment they can count on. A renter, however, is going to be subject to whatever's happening with the landlord. Remember, your job is not to sell. Your job is to ask questions, listen to answers, and provide reasonable consultation. The next question is, of course, coming in on the heels of the announcement about student loan forgiveness. We're not going to talk about right or wrong, morals of any of that. Put all that out. We're not going to fight, all right? Not fighting. Whenever you see something like this happen, though, where it impacts realtors is that many of your buyers who are carrying student loan, if they qualify for any of this forgiveness, it may lower their debt to income ratio, which could help them qualify for a property. So right now is when you have to have a really good relationship with a CPA, with a lender who's paying attention, so that you can make sure that you're paying attention to timelines, deadlines, when all this goes into effect. I did hear in the text that the forgiveness is not going to be taxable. So that's a good thing. But again, as the rules get laid out, we're going to learn more. Don't assume this happens overnight. But if you do have buyers in your database who are holding off because of student debt, go ahead and reach out to them, reconnect them with a trusted local lender, and help get that conversation started. Now, next question. I better clear my throat. This is a big one. I've been wanting to get into real estate investment, Leigh Brown, but frankly, I'm overwhelmed. These are my honest friends. I love you, because there's too much information out there. What would you suggest to help me move past analysis paralysis? So first of all, high five for having a little humility and admitting you don't know everything. That's a sign of a grown-up. But here's a couple of resources where you should start. First book, you got to read. You got to read. Don't crib note it. Don't TED Talk it. Read the book. Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. You've got to get a bigger picture understanding of investing before you dive into it. It will change the game for you, I promise. And as a side note, if you have teenagers in your house or tweens, buy the cash flow game that is built on the same premise. Play that with your kids. They'll hate it at first, then they'll get addicted, and they will become far more financially savvy. For those of you that are listening learners, go download the Bigger Pockets podcast. Now, talk about too much information. Holy smokes, Bigger Pockets has a little bit of everything. But if you go through and look at the episode list, look at the hundreds of episodes and pick the ones that have some relevance to where you are financially, because your beginning investment strategy will change based on your age, the amount of liquid funds that you have to do investing, the area where you live, your personal risk profile. Lots of factors go into play, and you can totally dial into some specific niches on bigger pockets. If you happen to be a realtor, hey, member of the National Association of Realtors, we have a really cool tool that's included as a member benefit, and it's called Financial Wellness. My good friend, Leigh Brown, who was president of the National Association in 2017, dreamed up this tool to help realtors get more financially savvy so they'd be able to retire one day. You can find it at financialwellness.realtor. And what will happen is you plug in a few pieces of info and it will do that gamification thing where it spits out at you some things you could research and learn about. And spoiler alert, when you dial in there and start learning about investment properties, it's all going to be information you can convey to your clients because they might want to invest in real estate too. I do know that when I'm buying more investment properties for myself, I always use realtors in other markets who are also active investors. I like to know people are handling my money that do this. It's very important to me. So it's a great question to ask if you're out to buy rental properties. Find a realtor who's actively putting their money in that game. Now, for you getting started in investments, I'll give you my little bit of background. My first rental properties were when Steve and I got married, we kept our single houses as rentals. They've been refinanced. We did sell one of them in a 1031, and that single family house turned into an 8-plex, which is doing great. The other one we still have, and it's almost paid off. We have a couple of other single family properties. I bought a commercial building for my real estate business, and I was really scared. So I got a commercial realtor to come in with me and guide me in that process because I don't know that side super well. And our best performing rental properties are definitely the beach houses. There's a ton of opportunity in vacation homes and resort properties. But again, you better talk to somebody that knows it, because buying at the coast, wildly different than buying in the middle of North Carolina. And don't worry, I got somebody if you've got questions. The best thing I can tell you though, if I could go back and change anything, I'll add this question in. Leigh Brown, what would you go back and change in your investment portfolio? I would go back and buy more properties. I would buy every cheap property I could find. I really, really, really wish I had bought more properties during the last recession, but I wasn't financially capable. This time I've got more liquid funds, and I am looking forward to the opportunity to help bring communities back in a really positive way. But if I were buying my first house again, I wouldn't buy a single family. I'd buy a duplex, maybe a triplex if I could find one, or a quad, because those FHA loans, VA loans, USDA, most of your first time loans are what we call single family 1 to 4. Most realtors only deal with the 1. Oh, that's right. But a 4-plex counts in that same category. So theoretically, you could buy a 4-plex, live in one, and rent the other 3 out. That's the original house hacking before the whole concept came alive. So start to do some research and then get active. There's no time like the present. And by the way, I'll just tell you, if you're waiting on prices to go down to invest, that might not be the best strategy, because if you're investing for the long term, think about it like you think about your mutual funds and your stock portfolio, and you buy continuously. We call that dollar cost averaging. Real estate's no different. Unless you're a flipper, you're going to buy it and hold it. So buy it and keep cruising. Okay, next question. Have you ever decided not to work with a potential client? I got a list of people I've chosen not to work with, and people who said, Leigh Brown, you're not my cup of tea. That's totally cool, because we have almost 1.6 million realtors in the country and a whole bunch of licensees that aren't members of the association. So the consumer has a bazillion choices. As a realtor, I'm in a really big marketplace. I have choices too, because I'm running a business. So I have to know what my deal breakers are. Frankly, one of my biggest deal breakers is my schedule, because I have 2 teenagers. I'm out of time, y'all. I wish I'd spent more time at home when they were tinies. I wish I'd homeschooled. Can't go back. If wishes were horses, beggars would ride, right? But I don't want to give up a lot of time with them when I have it. So I'm not going to give that to a seller or a buyer. And I love my buyers. I love my sellers. I love my agents, but I love my kids more. I love my kids more than I love money. You hear me on that? You got to be able to lay that dollar down there sometimes, and it'll come back. I'm going to tell you that it will. But I also know my other priorities are I'm going to church. I've got to worship the Lord, and I can't do it by myself like I do in a community. So a deal breaker for me is somebody that has to have me on Sundays because I worship on Sundays. Now, that doesn't mean I don't want to help. It's why I have a team of great agents who can stopgap for me, but they don't get personally Leigh Brown. I'm okay with that. And hopefully they are too once they find out that I'm a human being. But I will tell you a little story about that because many of y'all know I'm a morning person. I love to get up at 4 o'clock. I like to run in the dark where nobody can see how awkward I look. I do my devotion, drink a pot of coffee, and then I get my day started. By 7 o'clock, I'm basically turned into a pumpkin and I'm no good to anybody. I had a seller to call me and we were having a conversation. I said, what are you looking for in a realtor? She said, I want communication. I said, great. What does that mean to you? She said, I'm going to call you every day at 11 o'clock and we're going to talk about my house. AM or PM, ma'am? And she said, PM, that's the end of my day. And I said, well, that might not be the best outcome because I go to bed at 9 o'clock on a late night. If I can get in bed at 8:30, I'm a happy camper. I said, but at 11 o'clock, do you want me to wait up and talk to you? Or do you want me to get up and talk to you? She said, yes. I said, ma'am, this isn't going to work. I'm no good at 11 o'clock. And the early Leigh in my early years of real estate would have said yes. And I would have done a fine job and I would have been miserable. Life's too short to be miserable. If I know anything as a medium-aged person, it's that misery is not good for anybody. So here's what I did. I didn't just tell her to pound sand and hang up the phone and say, go away. I said, may I connect you to a night owl realtor? She said, yes, because she was kind of not happy with me right then. I called a realtor that I love and adore who happens to be a night owl. In fact, you can't get her on the phone before 10 a.m. unless you're lucky. And I said, but you like a wonderful seller referral who wants somebody at 11 o'clock? And she said, hallelujah, yes. I connected the two of them. Peas and carrots, y'all. That house sold. The seller was happy. The agent was happy. And I was able to stay in the space where I can be highly efficient and super kind, joyful, and peaceful. You, though, have to decide your own deal breakers. You might have a different schedule than I do. That's great. Just figure out what it is and let people know. It doesn't mean you won't be flexible. I've been plenty flexible in my career. However, you got to make choices. And if you're in real estate, you are running a business, aren't you? If you haven't yet decided if this is a hobby or a business, I recommend you figure that out right quick because real estate's a big deal. You can't treat somebody's largest financial instrument like it's a hobby. All right, let's see if there's any other questions. Okay, the last question was kind of a silly one, but I'll answer it anyway because I'm fun like that. This realtor reached out and she said, Leigh Brown, I want to ask you a silly question. Are you ticklish? And you know what? I would normally have said yes when I was little, I was, but my dad was one of those dads that liked to do the whole tickle monster game until you were basically throwing up laughing. I'm not that ticklish anymore unless I'm getting a pedicure. And then I just have to suck it up because I don't really want to upset the kind man who has the best foot massage in Concord. And don't ask me who it is because I'm not telling. He's plenty busy. And if y'all go swarm up in there, I can't get an appointment. And as a runner, I got to tell y'all, pedicures are very important to runners. So that's the questions I had for this week. It's a lot of information I just threw at you. So you can always save it, go back and see if this helps in your real estate life a little bit. As always, any questions that crop up in the course of doing your business, send them to me by DM or email, call me, text me, however you want to send it over, and I'll answer it next Thursday afternoon right here with Q&A.